Okay, so get this right. There are some people out there, some estimates, that the average person today is consuming something like 100 times more seed oils
Yeah.
than somebody just a century ago.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, that's pretty wild when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about today, this deep dive into the world of seed oils.
Okay.
We're going way beyond just the surface level stuff.
Right.
We're digging into like the history of this stuff, the science,
Yeah.
and really looking at like, what are the consequences
Yeah.
of making these oils like such a core part of what we eat, right?
It's really interesting, you think about something like cooking oil and it's so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
It's in our pantries. We
Yeah.
just kind of,
Yeah.
we don't really think about it a whole lot.
Right.
But it really does have a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And it's not just as simple as like, oh, well, we just,
Yeah.
pour some oil in a pan and cook our food, right?
Right.
Like it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
There were huge shifts in dietary patterns that took place over time.
Right.
Things from technology and economics to just like how we perceive health in general,
I mean, and you think about it, for most of human history,
Yeah.
like, that bottle of whatever oil you're grabbing at the supermarket,
Right.
like that didn't exist.
Yeah.
People were using animal fats, olive oil, coconut oil, like stuff that our ancestors would,
Right, exactly.
would recognize.
Things that, our great-great-grandparents would have been using. It wasn't really until around the turn of the 20th century that things really started to change.
Okay.
And a lot of that had to do with the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, wow.
It really ushered in this whole new era of food production.
So how did they even make this stuff back then?
Yeah.
Like on a mass scale, you know what I mean?
Right.
It seems like you need a serious chemistry set just to get started.
Right. Well, and this is where necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Okay.
Because around this time, you have the cotton gin that's revolutionizing the cotton industry.
Right.
And what they realized is that cottonseed, which was basically just a waste product up to this point,
Oh, wow.
they realized, hey, we can get oil out of this stuff.
Wow.
And as technology advanced, they realized, well, we can get it out of soybeans. We
Yeah.
can get it out of corn.
Wow.
All these other crops.
Yeah.
So it's like we weren't just limited to what nature was kind of,
Ah.
abundantly giving us. Right.
Yeah.
We figured out ways that we could engineer our own abundance.
That's so interesting.
You know?
Okay, so we've got the tech down, but like technology alone doesn't explain why these oils like kind of blew up the way they did. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like there's got to be an economic angle, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it this way.
Yeah.
Seed oils, especially from crops like soy and corn, they were way cheaper to produce than,
You're right.
your traditional olive oil or things like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, as the demand for vegetable oils grew,
Yeah.
you start to see government subsidies
Oh, wow.
for these crops, which made them even more appealing for
Wow.
farmers to grow.
Yeah.
So it's this, it was this perfect storm of affordability, right?
Right.
And just like widespread availability.
Right. Yeah. So we got affordability, availability, but there's a third thing here
Yeah.
that I think is really key to understanding how seed oils
Right.
dominated the way they did.
Yeah.
And that's this whole health halo, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like this idea that these oils were actually good for you.
Right. And a lot of that had to do with starting in the mid 20th century,
Yeah.
you started to see concerns about saturated fat and heart disease.
Okay.
And so seed oils, being low in saturated fat, were kind of, they were marketed as the healthy choice.
Right.
They were touted as this heart healthy alternative
Yes.
to, your animal fats and butter and things like that.
Huh.
And people bought into it.
Yeah. I remember like my grandma
Yeah.
switching from butter to margarine.
Right.
Like it was like a religious experience.
Right. Yeah.
Like it was unbelievable how quickly like people just
yeah.
Bought into these ideas.
Totally.
And so that's kind of, I think, where it starts to get really interesting, right?
Right.
Because we've talked about how seed oils became so popular.
Yeah.
But now we need to talk about the science.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the kind of nuances.
And the potential downsides.
Because it turns out this heart-healthy alternative
Yeah.
might not be so clear-cut
Right.
as we once thought.
Absolutely.
For a long time, I thought of, like fats is kind of this like good or bad thing.
Right.
Like avocado, good
Yeah.
donuts, probably not so good. Right. But this whole seed oil thing really kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about good fats versus bad fat. It's about like the balance. Right. So when it comes to seed oil specifically, one of the things I kept hearing about was this whole omega-6 to omega-3 ratio.
Right.
And I got to be honest with you, like, I don't totally, like, get it.
Sure.
So for those of us who aren't, like, fluent in fatty acids,
right,
can you just break down, like, what are these things?
Yeah.
And why should we care about them?
Absolutely. So omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay.
They're both considered essential fatty acids.
Right.
Meaning that our bodies need them
to function?
But we can't make them on our own, right?
Right, exactly. So we have to get them from our diet.
Okay.
And omega-6 is found in a lot of different foods, but it's particularly abundant in seed oils.
Okay.
And it plays a role in things like cell growth,
blood clotting, and it's involved in a lot of important processes in the body.
Right, sure.
Omega-3s, on the other hand, you find those in things like fatty fish, walnuts, flax seeds, things like that. Yeah. And they're kind of,
they're famous for being anti-inflammatory.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And they're, really important for brain health.
Right.
And so, like you said, it's all about balance, right? Yeah. We need both of these things.
Yeah.
But it's the ratio between them that really matters.
So what happens when that ratio gets out of whack?
That's where we run into problems.
Okay.
So the ideal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is thought to be somewhere around 2 to 1 or even 1 to 1.
Okay.
But the problem is that because seed oils are in so many of the foods we eat, salad dressings, snack foods.
Yeah, it's in everything.
It's in everything.
It's crazy.
A lot of people are consuming a ratio that's closer to 10 to 1.
Wow.
Or even 20 to 1.
So we're talking way out of balance.
Way out of balance.
And that's not good.
And that's not good.
So what are the implications of that?
Well, I mean, the big thing is inflammation, right? Okay. When you have too much omega-6 relative to omega-3, it's like you're constantly fanning the flames of inflammation in your body.
Gotcha.
And it's not just I'm a little bit sore after a workout. We're talking about chronic, low-grade inflammation that's happening all the time.
Right.
And that can have some serious consequences for our health.
Like what kinds of consequences are we talking about here?
Well, I mean, chronic inflammation has been linked to everything from heart disease to type 2 diabetes, autoimmune conditions, even certain types of cancer.
Wow. It's kind of scary, honestly, to think about.
It is, yeah.
How something as simple as the type of oil that you're using could have these kinds of downstream effects.
Right. I mean, our bodies are complex systems. Mm-hmm. And when one part is out of balance, it can have these ripple effects.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Throughout the entire system.
Okay, so we've got the omega imbalance thing, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
But there's another issue that we haven't even touched on yet, right?
Why?
And that's oxidation.
Yes, oxidation.
Okay, so we've got the omega imbalances and we've got oxidation, which, 2 strikes already.
Right.
And now we got to talk about trans fats.
Yes.
Which, I mean, honestly, trans fats just have the worst reputation.
No, the worst.
Every time I turn around, there's another article screaming about how bad they are for you.
Right.
And for good reason, right?
Yes.
They've been linked to everything. From heart disease to inflammation, messing with your cholesterol levels, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, they have this direct connection to seed oils, right?
Right.
So connect the dots for me here.
Yeah.
How do we get from these seemingly innocent little seeds to these dietary supervillains?
Well, a lot of it goes back to this idea of stability.
Okay.
So natural seed oils, especially the ones that are high in polyunsaturated fats, they're naturally kind of unstable. They have a shorter shelf life. They don't hold up that well to high heat.
Right.
So food manufacturers, they want to be able to keep these oils on the shelf longer, right?
They got it, yeah.
So they came up with this process called partial hydrogenation.
Partial hydrogenation. Okay, yeah, that sounds a little chemical-y to me.
It is. It's a very it's a chemical process basically where they take a liquid seed oil and they bombard it with hydrogen atoms, which changes its chemical structure, and it makes it more solid at room temperature.
So that's how margarine, that spreadable butter, that's how they make that.
Well, that's exactly how they make it.
Wow.
Okay. So it's this process of taking an oil, making it more solid, and, it increases shelf life. It makes it better for baking.
Sounds great so far.
Yeah, it sounds great, except for the trans fat.
So we're basically like trying to make this oil more convenient, more appealing.
Right.
And in the process, we're creating like this whole other problem.
Exactly. And it really highlights this point that,
Yeah.
even with like well-intentioned innovations, right?
Yeah.
We can still have these unintended consequences.
Right. And it makes you realize like we got to be paying attention to like what's actually in our food.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's not just about like, oh, this is a fat or, this is whatever. It's like, how was this stuff made?
Right. Exactly. How did it get here?
Yeah, like what happened along the way?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just the trans fats that are a concern.
Right.
Because we've also got like, how these oils are processed in the first place.
Right. So we talk about how unstable those polyunsaturated fats can be.
Right.
And a lot of times the ways that these oils are extracted using high heat chemical solvents that can actually damage those delicate fats even more.
Wow.
Which can then lead to even more oxidation.
It's like we're like, putting these oils through the ringer before they even get to our kitchens,
Exactly.
So, I mean, it just makes you wonder, like, how did this happen?
Right.
How did we let this one ingredient, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, how did it become, like, such a ubiquitous part of what we're eating?
Well, it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
There's no one answer. I mean,
yeah.
Think about it, like, we have agricultural subsidies that make soy and corn, like, incredibly cheap to grow.
Okay.
We have a food industry that, often prioritizes profit and convenience.
Right. Over health.
Over health, exactly. And for decades, the dietary guidelines were telling us that saturated fat was like the enemy and that we should be replacing it with these seed oils.
Yeah. And now it's like the opposite.
Right.
Which is, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is,
So, like, where do we go from here?
Right.
It sounds kind of like doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping there's like, there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
There is. And it starts with knowledge, right?
Oh,
just being aware of this information puts you ahead of the game.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's not about like, banishing all seed oils from your life, but it's about like
being mindful,
making informed choices.
So like, what are some things that people can do?
Yeah.
Like, what are your go-to cooking fats these days?
I love olive oil.
Okay.
I think olive oil, especially extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah.
It's delicious. It's got a lot of antioxidants.
What about like avocado oil?
Avocado oil is great. Avocado oil has a higher smoke point.
Right.
So that's really good for,
like high heat.
Cooking at higher temperatures.
Yeah. And then there's always coconut oil.
Coconut oil, yeah. Really heat stable.
Right.
Gives it kind of a unique flavor.
Yeah, for sure.
Depending on what you're making.
Right. And then, of course, we can't forget about like the animal fats,
Yes.
Like butter, ghee, tallow, all that stuff.
Making a comeback.
Yeah, exactly.
For good reason.
What are some other things that people can do to kind of be more mindful about this stuff?
Read your labels.
Yeah, that's huge, right?
It's huge because you would be surprised at how many things
Sleep in everything
have seed oils in them.
Right.
And just because it says, 0 grams trans fat doesn't necessarily mean that there's like 0 trans fat in there.
It could still be in there.
It could still be in there.
Yeah, those are tricky. Those labels.
They're very tricky.
And I always tell people, like if you can, opt for like whole foods.
Yes.
Over processed stuff.
Absolutely. The less processed, the better.
Yeah. That's always a good rule of thumb.
For sure.
I think.
Yeah.
And then like don't underestimate just like getting enough omega-3s.
Yes. Omega-3s are so important.
Eat some fish, a couple times a week.
Yeah, get some fatty fish in your diet.
Take a fish oil supplement if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Like that can make a big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah. Well, this has been really, really eye-opening.
Good.
I think this is like, a great example of like why we need to be questioning like our assumptions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Especially when it comes to like health.
Yeah, what
Because what we thought was healthy like a few decades ago
right.
is like totally different now.
totally different.
And that's okay. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's the beauty of science, is that it's constantly evolving.
And we're learning more all the time.
All the time. And as we learn more, we have to be willing to sort of
shift our thinking.
Yeah, adapt.
Yeah, totally.
Be open to new information.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
This has been a deep dive into the world of seed oils. You know,
it has.
We've gone through the history, the science, all of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys feel like you have the information that you need to make the best choices for you.
And keep that conversation going, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys have questions.
Keep learning, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time.